welcome to another Modern Monday review. You join me today at the wheel of a 2020 4th generation Audi A3. This is the new 4th generation 2020 Audi A3 Sportback. And it's very windy here, so I'm going to get in the car and tell you about it from the driver's seat. So the old A3, the 3rd generation, was ubiquitous. It was a massive seller and it was on every street. It was a real hit for Audi. The previous generations of A3 have been very conservative, not staid exactly, but certainly a safe design. The last generation, the 3rd generation, brought a bit more excitement and a bit more driving dynamics to that, and certainly a bit more comfort to the ride as well. That ran from 2013 to 2020, 7 whole years. And so this 4th generation A3 has got big shoes to fill, but the platform it's built on is proving to be very good indeed, so I've got high hopes this is going to be a good review. Now, looking around the exterior of the car, the designers have been pretty clever at both playing it safe and being a bit daring at the same time, because it is instantly recognisable as an Audi A3, that you can just glance at it from pretty much any angle and know what you're looking at. This time around, and they apparently cite the Lamborghini Countach as inspiration for this thing, the new family face with that big grille deep into the bumper makes the whole thing look very aggressive, and in keeping with where the car styling has gone over the last 3 or 4 years, the whole car looks a little bit more bulbous, a little more bulky, and fewer sharp creases around. While we're talking about the front of the car, those headlights are now LED as standard across the range, but the very top of the range though get matrix LED, which means the shape adapts to oncoming traffic, so high beams move the light away and don't dazzle oncoming drivers. Now, under the bonnet there are a choice of 6 different engines: petrol, diesel and hybrid. This being the 35 TFSI, it's got the 1.5 or 1498cc 4-cylinder petrol turbocharged, making 148 bhp and 250 newton meters of torque. Until the S3 turns up, this is the most powerful petrol in the range. Now, inside the car, there are 7 different trim levels. This one is the S-Line, which is pretty well stacked. It is loaded with a few extras as well. Now, once you've climbed into the car, the thing you will notice is when the car is turned off, this bright, clear dashboard disappears. Let me turn the power off for you right now. If you remember the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the black ship with the black interior, the black dashboard covered in black dials with black buttons with black labels, and when you push them, a black light comes on. When the power is off, this is very much that kind of deal. It's very, very dark, very minimalist. Push the button though, the car wakes up, and suddenly you've got a 10.3-inch screen in front of you and a 10.1-inch screen to the left. Now, before I do the walk around, I will give a little bit of attention to all of this stuff. Now, first of all, the dials in front of you are extremely bright, extremely clear. You can read them with excellent legibility. The temperature gauge on the left, and I'll zoom in for you. The temperature gauge over to the left, and the fuel gauge over to the right are little kind of dotted bar dash charts, which I'm not always a fan of, but there's enough dashes here to be actually useful, because there can be too few dashes and you can't really tell how much fuel you have. We've got all our information up here. I've only driven the car a short way. We should be getting mid-40s mpg. It's been a lot of country lanes and some rapid motorway this morning, so in fact 425 miles of range remaining in this car after I've driven about 40 miles so far this morning, so impressive range in this vehicle. Over to the left we have got this huge screen, 10.1 inches as I say, amazing clarity and detail and really good angle of view as well. You can sort of lean in from outside the car and still see quite clearly what's on the screen. This is an impressive display, it really is. Back to the home button over here, and all the usual things you would expect to find. And of course, down the right hand side we've got the constant menu, so you can get to any of the other major settings quickly and easily without having to go back to a sub-menu, which is good. But as we will find when we're driving later on, I'm not massively a fan of putting too many controls into screens, because when you're driving you can't necessarily find them with your fingers. There's no haptic response, there's no, like the old Rover P6, every button was a different shape, which looks kind of odd on the dashboard, but you're driving in the dark, you don't have to take your hands off the dashboard to find the button you want. Anyway, enough of that, let's have a look around at the rest of the car. And as always, let's start over on the driver's door, where we've got these quite curiously shaped door handles, which you can kind of pull from either side. If you want to do the Dutch reach, which is reading with your left hand, so you can look for bikes, it works that way. Or if you want to be the old I hate bikes, you can put it that way, and that follows into a matching bit of, I think it's aluminium trim, which has got a nice LED light in it which glows beautifully in the dark. And in front of it we've got lock and unlock buttons, and of course into a big door pull, which is quite chunky and solid. That's quite tough, hard plastic actually. It's not like a rubbery surface, just regular plastic. And hidden inside there, we've got the main door speaker. There is a tweeter up here on the A post as well. So quite decent sound. We've got all of our controls for windows, child lockout, and we can actually, as well as adjusting the mirrors, wind them in off that little switch as well, and turn on the heaters in the mirrors, which is a good thing to have. One other nice mirror feature on this car, when you knock it into reverse, it does dip the left-hand mirror, the passenger side mirror, to make parking easier, which is a great feature for preserving the shape of your alloys. A slightly padded area here, it's quite firmly padded, but padded nonetheless. A leatherette type material. We've got a door pocket, which is quite deep. We've got a bunch of keys and an iPhone wire in there for the CarPlay. This is meant to be a bottle shape, but the axis is a little bit tight. It's kind of slide it in from the front and you can get stuff in there. That is the door, and this is the 3 pedal option, which is excellent in my view. Nice metal pedals because it's the S-Line. Well weighted, well spaced. This is a really nice car to drive from that point of view. Up onto the dashboard, the air vents beside the steering wheel are almost like afterburners from some kind of spaceship surrounding. In fact, no, these are the afterburners. These are control vents. This is looking down the back of some futuristic aircraft while you're driving. And this is the rear of the fuselage. The whole thing is very interestingly designed. I do like the attention to detail and the level of attention they've paid to making this. Moving forward, we have got 3 stalks on this car, indicators and cruise functions on the left hand side, more cruise functions down there, and wipers on the right hand side. Obviously it's got all the automatic lights, wipers and so forth. To the right of the wheel, in this big piano black area, piano black is a big feature of this car because everything is very, very shiny and black and sophisticated. Front and rear fogs, and the light switch. And the light switch for the headlights is a push button which cycles through the options and actually shows you on the dashboard, thankfully, which one you have selected. I have noticed though that it does seem to default back to auto regardless what you leave it on. I don't know if that can be changed in the settings menu. There are many settings on cars like this. Now moving forward again, we have got the steering wheel, which is a very nice leather item, flat bottomed. We've got many options and controls, telephone, audio, stuff, and of course the horn in the centre. Horn test. Yeah, decent horn. We approve of the hornology of this car. Now we move across into the centre of the dashboard. Now, as I said before, we've got this big screen dominating the centre of it, so everything is just focused completely around this infotainment screen. This is the centre of your being in this car. Now below that we've got this long strip of aluminium type stuff, or plastic in aluminium colour, which kind of runs the width of the car really. It follows in from this little curve to the right of the wheel, disappears for a second and then reappears and follows over to the passenger side. And that is framed also by this rather nice kind of little stippled detail panel here, which if you drive past an Audi dealership, it looks a bit like the exterior of their buildings. And there's a big bank of air vents here on the other side for the passenger, integrated into this section, which looks really cool actually. Now, moving back below this little line here, we've got our buttons, which are virtually invisible along the dashboard. Just a small screen showing what the AC and the heating and ventilation is up to. But then this little panel of buttons here, virtually unmarked, very discreet. They're actually toggles that lift forward and push back, and you use the information on the screen to know what you're doing. So that's all quite interesting. They kind of disappear into the dashboard. They're part of the dashboard and invisible. Now moving down here, we've got a couple more controls, traction control off, auto start stop off, hazard lights, and drive select, so we can choose our driving mode: efficiency, comfort, automatic, don't know how that chooses, dynamic, and of course you can select it to make it individual however you like it. I found comfort to be very nice on like a motorway cruise, and hit the B roads, and dynamic is nice. Now moving down, we've got 2 slots for USB, so you can plug 2 phones into charge. This will link you into CarPlay and Android Auto. The cubby hole is just about big enough for a phone, but it's a bit awkward when the plug is connected into it. And this is where things are quite interesting. You may have noticed there were no radio controls up here. They are down here. They're obviously on the steering wheel as well, but down here this little disc is power on, power off, station select mute, and volume that is like an old iPod. You don't actually rotate it, you just spin your finger around it, and it's touch sensitive, which is quite cool, and that is opposite the start stop button. And of course, as I mentioned, this car, it's got the good gearbox. This is the manual. It's a really nice light positive shift. The gear stick itself is very chunky, very solid, perforated leather at the bottom, bit of aluminium and some piano black with the Audi kind of corporate font in there, so you know what kind of car you're driving just by looking at it. Yeah, it's a nice thing to use. It's good to find a B road, hustle through that. You will be having a good time. There aren't too many cubby holes I've noticed in this car, I have to say. Now moving back here, we have got the cup holders. This is quite an interesting arrangement. When you get in for the first time, there's nothing there. You think, well, how's my cup going to stay up? But it's actually quite clever, because if you want a big open space, you've got it. But if you want cups, you pull these little hoops around and it creates a cup holder. So you can put fairly big cups in there and they won't bash into each other, and they're quite well held. You also handbrake, another 12-volt socket, and a very tiny cubby hole just here, behind which we've got the armrest, which looks like it's going to open and have internal storage, but it does not appear to. And underneath that we've got, well, a sort of semi-open area for storage down here as well. Now the big question, of course, you are asking, I'm sure, because we've mentioned the cup, we haven't mentioned the T-shelf. This is astonishing T-shelfery from Audi just here. This is one of the finest T-shelves of the 21st century. This is a massive, very flat area, got a ridge to stop spills rolling into the front of the dashboard onto your knees. If they do run too deeply, they will go off to the edge of the car, so into the door pocket it will collect in a plastic hole. So spillages here, run down there, down there. Got sandwiches, cups, cake, knives, napkins. There is room for absolutely everything. This is the perfect T-shelf of 2021. I can't believe we've found a T-shelf winner and it's only mid-January. This is amazing. Well done, Audi. I did not expect to be saying that today. And lastly, in the front we have got the glove box, flock lined with little slots for business cards, slots for something else, possibly coins, and yeah, not a bad space room in there for odds and sods. Now let's have a quick look in the back of the car. Now, climbing into the back of the car, it's not a bad space. It's similar to a A-Class. It's a little bit bigger than a 1 Series, but if you want lots of space, you've really got to go to things like the Focus or the Octavia. However, it's not a bad place to be for most people, and I'm sort of average height, 5'10", 5'11", and it's really not bad at all. Lots of headroom, knee room's okay with the seats in a kind of middle position, and there's plenty of gadgets and entertainment facilities in here. We've got the same nice metal hawk's head, like an eagle's beak, door handles, so you can open from the rear or the front. Same dynamic door handles. We've got twin speakers in the door, so decent sound. Nice door pocket, string back vest for the back of your seat, air vents, and a 12-volt. So we are pretty much loaded, and of course we've got cup holders here in the back of the armrest. On the lowest trim levels, this is a 60-40 folding seat. On everything above the most basic models, this splits in a 40-20-20, so you can have much more flexibility in how you fold the back seat, and we have car seats or something in here. There is ISOFIX, obviously, of course, in here as well. And also, notably, we have got little quarter lights here in the back windows. So the big C-post isn't too much of a dead spot for looking out, and there are more speakers here in the C-post as well. So there's amazing audio and visibility out this car. Now the boot is actually not too bad a size. It's got room for plenty of objects. Let's take these bags and cases out to give you an idea of just how much space you have got in here. It does come with a big cargo net, and there's lash down points on all 4 corners. This floor can be set high or low, so you can have like an easy load over the boot lip, or you can hide valuables underneath there in the secret hidden area, or you can load it down lower still to make the entire boot space bigger. And there's actually still space in the bottom because there is just the pressing, so if you wanted to put a space saver spare wheel in there, you could. Now on the road, the A3 is light and fairly nimble, and it's easy to drive. It's got great visibility, the steering isn't too heavy, the pedals aren't too heavy, and the gear shift is lovely and crisp and just drops neatly from one ratio to the next. It's a nice gearbox to use. I definitely have this over the automatic. It's certainly no hardship having the manual here. In fact, I would say it's a benefit. This does take the last A3's handling, and I would say improves it. It's a nice, light, nimble car to drive. It's got McPherson struts at the front. The lowest level, the 30 badged car, has only got a fairly basic rear end, but 35 and above have all got 4-link rear suspension. So you can chuck it into a corner, and it's got very nice handling. Let's just move this up to dynamic. There's quite a range of engine options, the most basic being the 114 bhp and then going up to the big diesels. But this one really, the 148 horsepower petrol, the 35, is probably the pick of the bunch. You don't have to work it too hard to get more than respectable performance, and you still get really good economy. Now, pulling onto a dual carriageway would be an appropriate time to try a 0 to 60 on this car. Because apparently 0 to 60 on the A3 35 TFSI is 8.4 seconds. So yeah, that was relatively rapid, a tiny bit of scrabble from the front of the car, but not bad at all. This is the manual box. It's far more entertaining if you're actually doing this driving for fun rather than trying to get the latest, greatest Nürburgring lap time. Then it's much more entertaining to try and do that kind of thing with a manual box rather than an automatic. On the motorway, this is a comfortable cruiser. It's got loads of driver aids built into the car. For example, lane keep assist is on this one. We're showing green because we're within the lines at the moment. I'm not a huge fan of lane keep assist because if you drift towards the line for a genuine reason and don't indicate, it will fight you, and it's quite weird on back lanes, I find, on every system, on every car. That lane keep assist on country roads where you're not always driving exactly between the lines because of the nature of the road. It's a little bit annoying. Obviously we have cruise control, and we've got dynamic follow systems, so we can set that to a maximum speed limit and it will tail the car in front using their speed as a guide. Emergency brake assist is standard across the range, as is rear parking sensors. Moving up the range we get front parking sensors, and even on the top spec car we've got self-parking options, which is quite phenomenal, leading the way perhaps to some self-driving cars in the future. Again, something I'm not really a fan of. With the A-pillars being quite well forward and not that thick, you've got really good visibility from the front and the sides. The mirrors are a nice size, and the way they're mounted on the door, they're almost like a pod floating in your vision, so you can actually see around them a bit to see what's beyond them, so it doesn't really give you a blind spot. Now, the market this car is shooting at is pretty fiercely fought, and the other contenders it's fighting against are also extremely good cars. These are some of the best cars on the market, really. The family hatchbacks, this one is aimed more squarely at things like Mercedes A-Class, the BMW 1 Series. Even though this shares its underpinnings with the Golf family, the Golf is maybe creeping into this one's territory, but then that's also fighting against things like the Focus, the Leon, and the Skoda Octavia, obviously. But perhaps if you're looking at an A3, the BMW and the Mercedes are the ones you're looking at most seriously as an alternative. On the road, those digital instruments are really bright and clear, and they give you plenty of options for reconfiguring how the dashboard looks. So you can look at navigation, radio, car settings, driver assist, all kinds of things. In previous versions of the A3, there had been a 3-door version, but this time it's 5-door only, which seems to be a common thing across the entire car industry. They don't want the lack of economy of scale, the expense of building 2 different body styles for just one kind of car, which is a shame because I would prefer the look of the 3-door version of this size of car. It gives it that slightly younger, sportier, coupe-ish feel, but keeping all the practicality of, you know, the nice big boot, the general practical layout of a family-size hatchback. If you're someone who very rarely carries someone in the back seats, you don't need those rear doors. Well, what do I like and dislike about the A3? Well, the handling is nice. Even in comfort mode, it feels quite connected. It's quite rewarding. The steering isn't laden with feedback, but it is good enough, certainly for a car that's going to be driven like a mid-range, well-spec'd, comfortable car. It's not going to be ragging it everywhere all the time. It's fine for that. If you want that kind of thing, wait for the S3. There was a time when Audis tended to feel very, very nose heavy, and they've not got that same feel with this car at all. I really like the styling of it. It's a car which looked good when it arrived, and over the days I've had it, it's just got better and better. Every time I look at it, I see a little bit more detail in the sculpture down the flanks of the car, in the front of the thing, in the back of it, everywhere. Everywhere you look, there is interesting detail waiting to be found, which I'm really enjoying. I love this interior, the big black slabs of stuff going on. It's very refined, very dignified. I also rather like the iPod style touch control for the radio. That's quite a cool thing. And the nav, when you're driving through built up areas, it's got basically a Google Earth style photo of what you're looking at, which is really cool. There's a couple of things I don't like about it, I have to admit. For example, the seatbelt pokes up in a slightly awkward way, and I actually tore my coat pocket on it when I was getting in and out of it. And likewise, coming in and out past this really quite fancy trapezoidal area just here, I did bash my knee on that a couple of times. Just a slightly odd thing. Maybe it's just the shape I am and wrong for the car, I don't know. Well, thank you for joining me today at the wheel of this Audi A3 35 TFSI. It's absolutely loaded, and it just feels incredibly grown up and sensible, but with a touch of class that makes you feel like you've earned your place in the car. Whether you have or not, I certainly haven't. Thanks for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please hit like, subscribe, share as always, and I'll see you again next time driving something completely different.